Today, we're talking about a technology that will add $2 to $4 trillion to the global GDP every single year. Just as an aside, it's a heck of a thing when your low estimate is $2 trillion. The technology that we're talking about is, of course, generative AI. And that's just generative AI, not all artificial intelligence, including neural networks and machine learning. Talking just generative AI is expected, according to McKinsey, to add $2 to $4 trillion into the global economy every single year. Well, that strikes me as being a pretty important technology. So with that in mind, we'll pick a few examples of corporate strategies and look at how generative AI can impact each of those strategies. I hate to make grandiose statements, but I think the concepts that we're going to go over in this video could be vital to the survival of companies and organizations right now. So if you run a company or an organization, or if you even just work for one, this might be something to pay attention to. First of all, let's all get on the same page about how large language models and generative AI can help a company. For that, I'd like to refer to a research paper. The research paper is titled Generative AI at Work. And in this paper, researchers studied the impact of augmenting workers with a large language model by looking at 5,179 workers. That's a pretty decent sample size. These are customer support workers, so their job is to resolve customer issues. Hey, spoilers if you were going to read this research paper on your own. All right, you've been warned. The impact to productivity measured by issues solved per hour showed an improvement of 14%. If you use large language models, your customer service workers are 14% more efficient. And if you don't, they just stay the way they are. And this is the most important part. On top of that, it showed that the customers were happier, there was better worker retention, and less issues were escalated to higher levels of customer service. Wow, that's all really good stuff. So right off the bat, if you have customer service workers running at like a high scale, like the kind of organization where it takes a while when you call up to try to get customer support, well, then you should immediately start using large language models, like right away. Obviously, we need to consider what the cost of it is. Essentially, the big tech firms have gone out and made these models. They've created these models. So what is the cost to bring about all these improvements? Well, the NRE is kind of already done by the large tech companies. So at steady state, when these models are up and running, the cost is really electricity. I mean, imagine that. We can augment intelligence at a cost of electricity. I mean, stop and think about it. We flip a switch and suddenly your workers are 14% more productive. Or, you know what's a better way to probably think about this? Imagine your competitors flipping a switch and their workers suddenly becoming 14% more productive. Because this video is ultimately about how to apply these large language models into your corporate strategy. So let's step through a few basic corporate strategies and try to figure out what the impact of a large language model would be for those strategies. The first strategy we're going to look at is called cost leadership. The second strategy we're going to go over is customer focus. And the last strategy we're going to look at is talent oriented. So the first strategy we want to talk about is cost leadership. Now, this one's pretty straightforward. Basically, you differentiate yourself from your competitors by undercutting their price. And it's funny, but this can actually be a pretty effective strategy if you think about it. If you barely make any profit or even take a little loss, which could be an unfair trade practice, basically you sell a product for as cheap as you possibly can, and you end up taking market share and getting customers, and along with those customers comes a little bit of brand loyalty. And by taking that market share, you hurt your competitors in the longer term. How could generative AI support this strategy? The way that you would optimize the cost leadership strategy is you'd take that 14% efficiency improvement and you'd apply it everywhere you could, possibly by having less jobs. It probably wouldn't actually directly translate to a 14% job loss, but the only way you'll make it cheaper is by reducing your labor force. Quick aside, don't worry too much about this because while there's going to be job losses, a ton of new jobs are going to be created too. Remember, this technology is talking about a 3% boost to the world's GDP. I mean, that can't help but create some new opportunities. So, that said, let's put on our cold, heartless economist hat and think through how you could optimize cost leadership with an artificial intelligence generative AI. So, say you're building a product and you want to lower your costs, especially relative to your competitors. Here are the areas that could get more productive using generative AI. R&D, purchasing, at least the human part of it, not the materials. Operations, again, the human part of it, not the robots in the factory. Quality, marketing. Marketing might be minimal anyway. If you're doing the cost leadership model, your marketing is generally the sticker price that's lower than everybody else's. Finance and accounting, HR, and product support / customer service. Just like the example in the research paper we looked at earlier. And one area where your price might actually go up is information technology, because you're going to have to run these large language models. You might be running them yourself, or you might be accessing them. So you might need to pay a few more IT folks and have a little bit more compute power. Without actually bothering to do the math, I think it's pretty obvious to see that those are a lot of potential savings and one teeny tiny little potential increase. So with any degree of scale, it's pretty clear that large language models and generative AI could be beneficial to a cost leadership strategy, especially when you think about the fact that you're trying to take market share from your competitors through cost leadership. You really want to be careful of not doing this while your competitors do. I mean, you don't want to end up selling something at the same price as your competitors and they're actually making a profit and you're just breaking even. They'll win in the long run, and they could switch to cost leadership strategy and undercut you. So just to kind of simplify the basic game theory of it, you really need to start doing it if you're in a cost leadership strategy right away, or at least before your competitors do. The sooner the better. So the next strategy is customer focus. And boy, do I have some thoughts about this. With generative AI, you can actually treat each individual customer as something unique. Eventually, we'll be able to take every single customer and create sort of a bespoke plan for each and every one of them, because you'll have creativity and intelligence on tap, right? You'll be able to scale up your customer focus to narrowly provide exactly what people want with generative AI. There's a tremendous amount of potential here. But before we get kind of too far ahead of ourselves, let's just narrowly think about that example in the research paper cited about customer support. So I want you to imagine that you're an organization that has lots and lots of customers that need support. And imagine that, like, on average, your wait times are like 1 hour or worse. So if you're that organization and you turn this technology on when you call up to try to get some help, people in the queue behind you, those people will resolve their issues quicker. And then once it's your turn to get your issue resolved, it'll get resolved quicker anyway. Although whenever I call, the resolution is always just that they say no. So it never really takes that long when I call. So, that 14% improvement doesn't sound like a lot, but I think it makes it less likely that there will be these bursty instances of 2-hour holds or 3-hour holds where it's just a nightmare. It'll smooth out the bursts if everything is resolved quicker. And from that research cited, the customers were happier and less issues had to get escalated. Imagine if there was an insurance company where when you call up to try to help understand a claim, they're talking to you within 5 minutes. The point is, even with a modest improvement, it's less likely to turn into a bad customer service story that you end up complaining to your friends about, or the entire internet maybe. With generative AI, you can even go one further. You can think about marketing. The way marketing works right now is you have an advertising executive who comes up with a way to sell people a product, and then they use machine learning to find the channel that would respond best to that advertising message. So the job of coming up with that advertising message is one of those jobs that takes creativity and intelligence. So we have a switch we can flip to multiply creativity and intelligence by augmenting people. So instead of having one ad executive that dreams up a sales campaign, how about you look at the channels first and see who could ever be a potential customer, and then offer a more bespoke marketing to those channels. So instead of like narrowly focusing on the high probabilities, market to like a broader audience and customize your marketing specifically for what resonates with that audience. The idea is it could boost your reach for your advertisements. And if you think about it, putting the right ad in front of the right people is maybe more important than ever. So in multiple ways, generative AI dovetails into potentially happier customers, which is the strategy of customer focus. And consequently, you end up with loyal customers who want to keep coming back. So the last strategy we're going to talk about is talent oriented. And I've sometimes heard this called leadership factory. A great example of a talent-oriented corporate strategy is, well, at the beginning of this video, we talked about a company that made an estimate that generative AI is going to add $2 to $4 trillion to the global GDP every year. That company is McKinsey, and they're famous for having a talent-oriented strategy. People want to work at McKinsey because folks who work at McKinsey have a reputation of quitting and then becoming CEOs. That's the appeal of working at McKinsey, and that's their corporate strategy. Most places worry about their employee retention. They worry about what their employees do after they quit. Leadership factory isn't the only way of being talent-oriented. A lot of tech companies do this too. Tech companies will hire people who have very, very specialized knowledge. Like, think about semiconductor manufacturing. Things where if you happen to know a better way of doing something, or you can facilitate a better way of doing something, those tech companies will pay these people so much money, not just so that they can have a better approach, but so that those people don't quit and go to their competitors. They're actually two slightly different variants of the talent-oriented strategy. Call it talent-oriented leadership factory and talent-oriented secret sauce. Of course, the tech companies, they try to keep their secret sauce, and they do everything they can to keep their secret sauce from leaving. Whereas the leadership factory, once you've stamped out a leader widget, you try to send it off into the world so that you can keep your reputation high. Both are strategies built around talent. If this is your strategy, and you're thinking to yourself, well, all my employees are super high IQ and our talent is tops and there's nothing that's going to ever change that. What? I want you to consider the Wayne Gretzky quote. You don't want to skate to where the puck is. You want to skate to where the puck's going to be. Large language models today maybe have like 135 IQ. They don't really have an IQ because they don't have working memory, but let's just say for the sake of argument, if you force them to take a test, they score about the same as a person with 135 IQ. With the exception of the fact that they literally know everything about all things because they're trained on the entire internet. Most people can't pass both the MCAT and the LSAT, right? So they're very broad, but with 135 IQ, let's say. That's today, right now. Where are we in our curve? Are we getting better? Is it going to be 135 IQ today and 145 IQ a year from now? I mean, when it gets to 160 IQ, are you then going to jump on board and start augmenting your super smart, talented workers with large language models? Generative AI takes the talent-oriented strategies that I'm talking about, and it kind of increases the risk. If you can still make a talent-oriented strategy work in the world of generative AI, then you've got a really solid edge. You've got a really solid moat around what you do. If you can hold on to a talent-oriented edge in the world of generative AI, it's just going to be so much harder to do. These are the things you got to do. You got to get the best people to come in, and for at least some period of time, you got to get them to stay. If you're a leadership factory, you want them to eventually leave, but they have to stay when you need them to stay. If they're a secret sauce, you need them to stay forever. So the fact that the research study on customer support in generative AI showed improved employee retention dovetails really nicely with the talent-oriented strategies because you need to keep your employees around. You can't have retention not be under your control. For all three of these, I think it's clear that generative AI is a benefit. So in fact, I think we could go so far as to say that there's a pattern here. And the pattern is that you need to start doing it before your competitors do. In every single strategy, if you have the best employees in the world, you can wait a little while longer, but think about where we're headed. If you're trying to cut costs, this is a button you can push to make things 14% cheaper. And if you're trying to keep your customers happier than the other folks, this is a button you can push to make things solved 14% faster and 14% cheaper, such that you could apply that savings to keeping your customers even happier still. In all three of these cases, basic game theory is simple. Start using this before your competitors do. Some of you might be asking yourself, Well, what about the big regulation that's going to happen and change all this and make it so that we can't use this at all? Think about the pattern that we just perceived. That pattern applies to corporate strategies, but it also applies to governments. I don't think that America necessarily is going to regulate AI in a way that slows the progress because we don't want to fall behind in terms of our international competitors. We don't want to fall behind. While we might get regulation that says something like, don't ever let an AI directly post things on the internet because it could just become too addictive or something, or it could generate misinformation. You could start seeing regulations about misinformation or AIs posting directly on the internet, but I don't think you're going to see a regulation that stops the progress that we're making here because, well, we don't want our global competitors to get ahead of us. The game theory is the same. If Germany regulates AI and France does not, then France will pull ahead of Germany. This is the part of the video where I have a call to action. If you've watched this video and you're thinking, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, he's saying something that's so wrong, I want to hear from you. I want to know, I want to learn, and I want to know why I'm wrong. I've actually made a big pivot in my life, and I'm starting a master's degree in computer science, and I'm going to focus on AI. I'm sort of going all in on this stuff. So if you disagree with anything I've said here, please post a comment. If nothing else, if you leave a comment, I promise I will hear you. Hey, if you made it this far, like and subscribe. Seriously, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.